We'll move swiftly over then to Kirby, which was released today. I've done the first level, which is pretty much the demo, but like there's a couple of like tweaks to it. So there's not much more I can say that I didn't say last time. I don't know how much further you guys have managed to get since it dropped last night.
I am through the first world. I'm like halfway through World 2.
Yeah, I'm also on World 2 as well.
How is it? How you finding it?
It's a delight. There is no starker contrast in the world ever in the history of video games than going from Elden Ring to Kirby in the Forgotten Land. It is just like the perfect anecdote to all the stress and anxiety and just panic that comes with Elden Ring. And you go to Kirby and it's bright and it's happy and it's easy and it's adorable and it's a ton of fun and I love it.
Do you know when I knew, Garrett, that it was exactly the sort of game I needed to play right now? Was when I was in the first level or like the first world, and it was like, bring 5 tulips into bloom, and I was like, it's just such a pleasant request. Like, yes, I will.
3 snacks on top of a tree stump. It's like, yes, I will. Yeah, I will do that. Kirby, you enjoy that milk on that tree stump.
Exactly. And the fact that it gives you the car, like within maybe 5 minutes of booting the game up, you're in mouthful mode and you're driving the Kirby mobile around. I was like, this is awesome. Like, I was worried that sort of mouthful mode and, you know, possessing things, and that would be something that they would gradually teach you how to do, you know, and like the more complex things would be sort of squirreled away for later on in the game. But no, they just chuck you into it right away. The platforming feels great as well, like the floatiness of Kirby and the way that you kind of, you know, puff yourself up and just sort of glide. It's done really well, and I think is it the first 3D Kirby
game? It is. There's a really good interview on Nintendo's website with the developers from HAL about the process through which they brought Kirby into 3D and a lot of stuff they had to think about. Like, a thing that I didn't even think about was that because Kirby is a circle, which is predominantly pink, if Kirby is facing away from the camera, you actually can't tell which direction he's facing, because he could be facing to the right and the left. You just see the back of Kirby. So they're like, it's fine in 2D, you can just go up and down, but in 3D, because of the way this character is designed, we have to think about how the player knows where they're looking. I'm like, I never thought about that. But yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff in that about how they designed the game to be really approachable in 3D, and they did a bunch of new stuff about hitboxes, or the hit detection in this game isn't based on like a traditional hitbox. It's based on player perspective. So if something looks like it should hit, even if it doesn't, it'll hit, because it's based on like the player perspective, and that's really cool, and that's really approachable, and it's really smart. It's on Nintendo's website. That's an interview with the developers. It's really kind of neat behind the scenes of like a franchise like this, and it's interesting to see even in like 2022 taking a character and a game from 2D to 3D still requires like a bunch of problems to solve.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because one of the things I was thinking as well is like Kirby's flight, like in older games, from what I remember, some of the older games, I don't know like if all of them, if I wanted to fly with Kirby, I can just start flying and flying and fly as long as I want. But in those 2D spaces, obviously the levels are quite restrictive, so there's not that far you can go. And obviously you can see that with this Kirby game, you can only fly for so long until you start to slowly glide down. So I'll be curious to see like how some of the later levels, how they work on that, how expansive they can get, and how much it kind of demands you to sort of time like being able to fly from one area to the next, or how much it tries to kind of restrict like how far you can actually go with that kind of stuff. But yeah, the very like brief amount of it that I played was delightful, and it took all of about 10 seconds for me to go, yep, this is a soundtrack of the year.
It's very good, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to mention the music. Like, again, the comparison to Elden Ring, I know, is horrible, Garrett, but like, you know, the music in Elden Ring just always makes me feel like something awful is going to happen to me at all times, whereas the music in Kirby just makes me feel like my soul is ablaze with joy every moment. It's all like, you know, nice kind of bright sounding, beautiful music. There's a bit like in the intro to the game where a song comes on the radio and Kirby starts dancing in his mouthful car mode back and forth, and I'm like, oh my god, this is the best. So yeah, the music, Mark, even as you get in further and you go through different levels and different parts of levels where you get like, I'm not going to call them boss fights exactly, but you're facing down different kind of, you know, things that are in the way, like it'll subtle changes to the soundtrack and different bits of music that they weave in there. It doesn't get any less delightful. It's class all the way through.
Like, really, if you have been suffering through Elden Ring, if you've been wandering the lands between as your tarnished character, trying to kill every dragon and just monstrosity that you see, and you're filled with all that anxiety and tension that Souls games generally bring, this game, just go play Kirby. Just go play it. You will feel such a great sense of relief to be in a world. Like, Kirby games are super easy. They're that by design. They're meant to be Nintendo's like entry-level franchise for kids from the ages of like 3 to 8. That's what Kirby has always generally been pitched as. And people are always like, Kirby games are too easy. And I'm always like, that's the point. They're meant to be easy. They're games for children. They're games that are meant to be really delightful and approachable. And I don't think that should change, because I think kids should have games made for them. But
of course, you can have Kirby and you can have Metroid on the same system. That is allowed.
And there's the progression. You go from Kirby to Mario. That's the way it works, you know? Mario is the more complex version of Kirby. But it's just such a lovely contrast to Elden Ring, and it is such a delightful game. And like by the third level, you'll be controlling like a flight of steps. And you'll just be swinging your step head at a bunch of people. And I love the way anytime you do mouthful mode, anytime you eat something, you have the hat of whatever power up you had, so it'll like your steps with your bomber hat, just headbutting every enemy in the way and creating platforms for yourself. It's creative, it's colorful, it's fun, it's so utterly pleasant. It's just the most pleasant experience possible. It's such a pleasant game.
To compare my experience with it kind of made me feel the same way I felt when I started playing Astro's Playroom for the first time, where like right away everything was just bright and light and straightforward, and there was no peril, and it just made me feel welcome and at home, and like I could figure stuff out straightforward. But at the same time, it didn't feel, you know, like what I was doing didn't matter because it was so straightforward. It was just a really nice journey, and I kind of hope that it doesn't it's not too big and like bloated and starts making you do a load of stuff that you don't necessarily have to do at some stage. Like I don't want to get fatigued with this game. Like I hope it is just like at most maybe 15-20 hours, if that, to play through the whole thing and enjoy it all like start to finish. But yeah, it's a similar feeling I would say to when I played Astros for the first time.
I'm guessing it doesn't do it, but that whole like sort of anime musical number that you was talking about earlier on, I'd love it if after each world it would give you like kind of just like the next part of the story but done in musical form. Yeah, I really like that, and I'm looking forward to playing more of it over the weekend.